Welcome. I am here with Tessa McLoughlin. She is founder and director of Kwench Culture Club, and I cannot wait to hear your story, Tessa. So I think the last time we connected
Yeah.
was in 2016. And so that is 5 years ago. It would have been right around this time in September. So that was my first GWA conference. So the first year I was the executive director. Maybe it was 2017, 2016, 2017.
No, I was 16.
16. Okay.
Yep.
So we hosted our conference in Las Vegas. We have not had quite such a fun conference since then. Our conferences are very fun, but people were getting thrown in the pool. There were do you remember Census hosted the party in the suite?
Your disco party?
Well, yeah, right. Yeah. We had the disco themed party with the
rocking
DJ. People, so that was a fun time. And you were there, you knew the keynote speaker, and anybody listening who was there will probably remember Adam. Well, actually, he was our closing keynote speaker. He had a schedule change, but he was so fun. He's standing on the chairs. Yeah.
He's like a big Olympic rower. So he's like this massive guy full of energy. And he's like the rowing Ted Lasso, you know?
Really. So you were running a co-working space for someone else, or just like you had this vision of something you wanted to create and you did it. So
I guess so in 2012, what happened for me is my life took this sudden turn. I had a very sudden marriage breakup, and I moved with my two kids from Whistler to Victoria. And I was still in quite a lot of shock and trying to sort of manage being in a new city. And one of my big things was I wanted to not be in a city where it snowed. So I was like, I hate scraping the snow off the windshield. It's like my pet peeve. So anyway, moved to Victoria, and I was doing everything I could to maintain a sense of happiness, because things were so chaotic. So I was like going to the gym here, going to yoga there. I had my background as a musician, and I'd pitched this idea for a festival. So I was working on this festival, but I had nowhere to work. So I'd go to coffee shops, then I'd go get printing done elsewhere. Then I'd, meet people for meetings in a Starbucks and all these things. And at one point I was just like, this trying to maintain this healthy life and happy life is just bombards you with busyness. And I was like, and that's contributing to not having a happy life. And I was like, why is this all in just one place? Like, why can't I have all these courses and things in one place? And I was like, oh, I should build that. And so that's kind of what started.
So this was in 2012-ish.
Yeah, this was in 2012.
Early. Yeah, I started my first co-working space in Chicago in 2012.
Right.
And you could, even in Chicago, Sam Rosen had a space. I mean, it was very new. Industrious opened their first location after I opened mine in 2012. I mean, it was just very new.
Well, you were ahead of me. You were totally ahead of me, because for me, I hadn't even thought of the co-working aspect of it.
Oh, there was barely a name for it then. I remember, I can't even remember what I Googled to find it. Probably you had the same thing. Like, I had this sense of what I wanted, but I didn't know what it was called. Yeah, back then it was. Yeah. And
for me, I was just like, and so as I said, my background is a musician, and my sister went to a very prominent acting school in Australia. And one of the things I would love, it was like Fame, really, the old Fame movie, not the new one. But, you'd walk in and there'd just be so much going on. There'd be opera there, there'd be theater here, musical theater, there'd be jazz, there'd be classical ballet, and I just remember the buzz that feeling you got of having all those people with these different disciplines around you. And so that for me was like, well, that's what I want to create. And so I started working on what it looked like. And while I was working on it and trying to raise money, I was then employed by another company to open up their co-working space. So I opened up there
Did they own the real estate, or were they?
Yeah, and they were a company that they had, the typical ones that still happen now. They have a lease, their company has shrunk, but they've still got this 5-year lease, so they need to do something with the rest of the space. And so I think they had actually, as a consulting company, had done something with WeWork, helped them consult right in the beginning stages. And so then I was exposed to WeWork, and I was like, oh, okay, so that's what this is. It's co-working. And anyway, so I opened up with them, and that's where I met Adam Creek. And then I left there. I said I'd give them a year, and then after a year, I left and started working full time on Kwench, and it was full on because I didn't have a business degree. I didn't know how I was going to build it, but it's a hard industry because you need space. So you can't. It's not like I'm an accountant. I can just work from home and sell you my services. It's like, no, the service is space. So you've got to. It's a very
immediate overhead. Right.
Yeah, and capital intensive. It's like, oh, I got to buy how many desks and chairs? And do you remember when you realized how much a chair costs? Like,
multiplied to your point, right?
What?
Yeah, good chairs.
Yeah,
and your
good
space
chairs.
is beautiful. We linked to your website in the show notes, but your
Thank
vision was not, IKEA furniture. You had a high end. Yeah. Well, so tell us, who did you want to serve? Who were you? So maybe your vision changed over time, but what manifested is a pretty beautiful high. So yeah, tell us who was going to come to this space and what your model kind of looked like.
For me, what I wanted it to be was, I was like, I would pay for something that was a service. So for me, it was all about it being a service. And so being like a hotel, but in terms of space and culture. So I wanted to make sure it felt like it was, a place that maybe you couldn't afford this in your own house, but you could reap the benefits of it here. But it was also something for me that was really clear was, there's some high-end co-working spaces that I feel very I like people to feel really comfortable when they come in, and as if they don't have to tiptoe around and don't move that magazine because it's so perfectly placed, or that's just not me. You need to have a sense of comfort in your space. So we are more high end for sure, but we call ourselves a full service work club. So there's no fighting over who packs the dishwasher. Everything's clean all the time. It's not that sort of grassroots co-working, which has a valid place, and we have many of them in Victoria, and they're great, and I send people to them all the time. But if you want an elevated experience, then that's what we are.
So I see on your website you offer fitness classes. How does that fit in?
Yeah, so we have a studio that, obviously because of COVID, that hasn't happened so much in the last 18 months, but we have a studio that is a fitness studio, as well as we can have conferences and things in there. So after this, I'll be going to a HIIT class, and then we have yoga, and then so people at the moment, people are just coming as they can, and yeah, we also have a dance classes. One of our members used to be a flamenco teacher on cruise ships, so he's really into teaching everyone flamenco. So
I love it.
So great.
Well, that's a good ice-breaking event.
Yeah. He always comes around doing these moves like this. It's fabulous. So so we're going to be doing that. We also have a meditation room and a library, which was completely selfishly built because I was like, I want to go in here and read a newspaper before I go home to the kids. And I've never done it once, but
it's aspirational, right? I love that point, actually. Yeah.
Right. And it's got little meditation pillars and a fireplace. And then we have what I'm in, which is our podcasting recording studio. And we've got a massage room. We've also, in our first location, we haven't set it up here yet because we were only open 5 months in our new location before COVID hit. I know. So But excuse me. So we've had a hair salon too.
Oh,
and
wow.
it's so good because you just book it, walk downstairs, you know.
So tell me how the hair salon model worked.
So we basically, someone rented an office, but it was a hair salon, and then members could book off their time and go in and get their hair done, you know, whenever they needed. The other thing we've built, which I didn't think I told you, so we had this space downstairs that I always wanted, some kind of cafe or something, but we're kind of on the edge of town, of Victoria, so it's a little bit more industrial here, but we've got amazing views of the water. But we had this space that was sitting vacant and no one wanted it during COVID, so we actually ended up opening up a cafe general store, and that has been a huge hit.
That's so interesting, even though your foot traffic is not sort of downtown level.
Not at all. No, but I mean, the members, they come in, they get their Americano, they grab you know, whether they grab a muffin in the morning or a croissant or something, and then they come up, and then at lunchtime they can go down and get a healthy lunch. It also does catering for our boardroom members. And then at the end of the day, you can go down and do your groceries before you go home. So you can grab some milk, you can grab some eggs, you grab some veggies, and 98% of the product we have in the store are locally made brands.
So do you operate that, or did you partner to operate it? You operate it.
Yes. That was like, we can do this.
Right.
And now I'm like, oh, that's a whole 2 new businesses.
Right.
A cafe and a general store.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
So is that staffed separately from?
Yeah. So we have 4 staff down there, 3 permanent, and then another few that are casual. So we have 4 down there at all times.
Wow.
Yes. And then
so it may be not turning a profit now, but will it?
Yeah, I think it will. It's very close. We opened in April, and I think it will turn a profit just this past month. We haven't actually looked.
Still kind of, we're not.
We're very COVID here.
Probably it. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, we have passports that are implemented here right now. So, and because we have a bar upstairs as well for events, and anyone afterwards can, after work or during work, if they want to, can have a beer. Because of a liquor license, we have to show passport proof of vaccine.
Oh, interesting. So, yeah. Okay, so you have a liquor license as well. So before we go into this detail, I want to just zoom out for a second. So I pulled up your website, and I hadn't noticed this before, but I think sometimes it's hard. We encourage operators. You have to be very clear about who you serve, who you are, and you have to articulate that on your website, right? So when people come, they know that's for me or that's not. It's not that easy to do, right? So
no, and our website's not very good at the moment.
So, but what I noticed, right on the homepage is just, so first of all, Club Kwench, right? So that's a different sort of connotation than Kwench Coworking. And your kind of line on the website, you may feel like it, needs to be improved, but we are a full service work and culture club for creative, ambitious thinkers and doers who seek more. And it doesn't get into the details of, well, what does that mean? How is that sort of manifested? But it's unique. The work and culture club, right, it implies something different than just co-working. And now you're telling me about the cafe and the bar and
yes. And that's interesting, Jamie, because when I started it, I knew that we weren't co-working. Like, and even now, I don't really, like, when I'm describing it to people, if I can see they're not getting it, I'll add in the word co-working.
The challenge is right. We're still teaching people what co-working is. But when you don't, I had another guest recently they serve a creative audience, and they said, we didn't want to call it that, but it's hard to not call it that for marketing purposes.
Well, and that's why because I called it a culture club. That was my thing. We're a culture club. And of course, everybody was like, people would come in the front door when we were at our first location while this was being built, and they'd be like, what is this, Boy George is in here, what's going on? Or other people, I live in British Columbia, so other people would think it was a marijuana store, coming in for the pot. That's definitely been, that's been a task, but I feel I'm nearly there where I can take that work and culture club out of it, and I can nearly flip it to the culture. Because honestly, like when, and as I say this all the time, there, one co-working space or work club, it's not a one size fits all. You have to find the one that fits you. And operators don't want you to be in their space if you're not a fit, because it doesn't help with their vibe as well. So I think for Kwench, one of the biggest comments we get is this, how different it is when you come in, that everybody's talking, everybody's like, the amount of people that work together, the camaraderie and the collaboration is massive. And that is the culture. We set the tone for inclusivity. We don't allow people in who are making racist or sexist comments, and that's about setting the tone, and that's what we do really well.
Well, in executing on sort of what you promise, because I think we're getting to this point in the industry where there are a lot of sort of buzzwords around hospitality but there's a gap between those who talk about it and execute on it. So, to your point, talking about being unique and the culture and the sort of club environment, you're executing on that and evolving it. It sounds, adding the cafe but you're delivering on the promise, which is also not always the case. It's sometimes easy to put words on websites.
Absolutely.
The experience when you walk in, you're like, well, but I thought I was going to get this, but I don't get this. So that gap. Yeah.
Well, and I read something the other day, because I'm just in another fundraising time. And I read something and it summed it up perfectly, that co-working has moved to another phase where it's not about quantity, it's about quality. So, what services are you giving? What are you allowing the individuals or the companies to come in here and have the ease of having? How are you removing that stress and anxiety from their lives and actually offering them a valuable service?
So how do you attract your members?
It's been pretty organic. Obviously, I'd started the other co-working space before, so I had a sort of a group of people that were really keen on how I built that one, and then they moved to Kwench with me. One of the big things about the first location that Kwench was in was it was right on a main street, and I originally had lost my first investor because I was only in a 1-year lease there while this was being built. And to me, I was like, he's just like, I think that's a risk. And I thought, that's crazy. It's like a main street and we're on the ground floor. This is advertising, so that was really helpful. And
so that turns out to be a bonus. How big was that space?
That space was only 5,400 square feet.
Yeah.
This one's 25,000.
Right. So were you only in it for a year? Did it only take a year?
No.
Right.
This building here was an old BC Rails building, and so it was an attic that I'd found, and the attic had been an attic for 130 years, and you can kind of see, anyway, there's these big beams. I'm going to tip my computer up for those people. Look like this. We're in a full attic, so
wow,
like right in front of me, it's dipping down like this. So we joined the two roofs together. It was two roofs, and then we just put a flat roof between them.
Okay.
So it took a lot longer than a year. Just a little bit.
But 5,000 square feet is enough to sort of build out. Although you wouldn't have had some of the level of, was it really a beta space?
It was a beta space. We had the hair salon, we had a bit of massage, and it was definitely frustrating because when you've got the vision and you can see it and you think you're communicating it, but it's it's interesting. I really remember this one conversation that I had at the the conference, which was so beneficial for me, I have to say, like, just to meet all of you and understand how everybody else works and how to frame what I was doing a bit better, because I didn't really know. But I was talking to someone about what I was building, and I just remember he stared at me and he's like, oh, and he was in Industrious in New York, and he was just no, Newhouse. Anyway, he said to me, oh, you sound like you're building the third wave of co-working. And I was like, oh, and I took that, because I was like, that's so great. You know, what I think this third wave is about: more services. We have to provide more things to get people out of their house and into flexible space.
So I'd love to. So you started with 5,000 square feet. Now you have 25,000 square feet. What does your product mix look like in terms of private space, open space?
That's, I actually don't know if I know. So we probably have about half of the space would be open, but we have boardrooms scattered through there. Yeah. We have about, of the 20,000 square feet on the top, there maybe be 15 that's dedicated desks, and then the perimeter are all offices. So I mean, if you want to get like how the revenue works for me, the basis that we work off is that the offices, once the office is full, that needs to cover the operations, and then the stuff in the middle of the club is the profit. And honestly, that's the culture, that's the energy.
100%. But yeah. Right, if you're only selling open space and trying to create that, it's challenging. So
it's super challenging. Yeah. And I mean, one of the things, I don't know if you did this, because I went to your Palo Alto space, but I'm sure other operators have this, where you have a company that wants to come in, but they're not the right fit, or they want too much space. And so I remember, especially when I was in the fundraising stage, and it was so stressful. I've never done anything more stressful, because no one wanted to give a single woman entrepreneur
who was a musician.
I was a musician. Yeah. I was a single mom. I'd just been through a divorce, so I had very little assets. Everyone was just like, oh yes, keep going with your hobby, darling. It was so upsetting, and but I got there. That's another story. But what was I going to say? So when those big companies came in and said, well, we'll take up 5 of your offices, it was so
tempting.
It's like, if I got them signed, then I'd get the loan from the bank. But then I've totally lost my whole company, you know? So yeah, have you had those problems too, where you've had to do that?
I think everyone does. I mean, I really, and I try to coach people through, I feel like you sort of lose your ability to be rational in those like pre-sales days, or, you know, the first few months when you're open and you're trying to stick to what you want to create, but you also need cash flow. So
yes,
it's so easy to say yes to things that you will later regret. It's hard
and become more
for everyone. Yeah. Hey, I just wanted to jump in really quickly before we continue with our discussion. If you're working on opening a co-working space, I want to invite you to join me for my free masterclass, 3 behind the scenes secrets to opening a co-working space. If you're working on opening a co-working space, I want to share the 3 decisions that I've seen successful operators make when they're creating their co-working business. The masterclass is totally free. It's about an hour. It includes some Q&A. If you'd like to join me, you can register at everythingcoworking.com/masterclass. If you already have a co-working space, I want to make sure you know about Community Manager University. Community Manager University is a training and development platform for community managers, and it can be for owner operators. It has content, training, resources, templates from day one to general manager. The platform includes mini courses that cover the major buckets of the community manager role, from community management, operations, sales and marketing, finance, and leadership. The content is laid out in a graduated learning path, so the community manager can identify what content is most relevant to them depending on their experience and kind of jump in from there. We provide a live brand new training every single month for the community manager group. We also host a live Q&A call every single month so that the community managers can work through any challenges that they're having or opportunities, get ideas from other community managers, build their own peer network. We also have a private Slack group for the group. So if you're interested in learning more, you can go to everythingcoworking.com/community manager. So well, tell us a little bit about your fundraising story.
Okay, it goes crying, asking.
Who were you asking? Were you calling strangers, friends and family?
So friends and family, no. I was just telling everyone. I was meeting with everybody, telling everyone what I wanted to do. I was new to that world too. I mean, I remember going for a meeting with an angel investor and him just talking about millions of dollars like it was nothing. And my mind going like, wow, I've entered into a whole new demographic here. And of course, now to me, $1 million isn't very much. I'm like, oh, that wouldn't last me too long in my business. So it was very frustrating. It was definitely a time, like I have this story, going to the bank, you fill out the forms at the bank and it's like, and what does your spouse make?
Right.
And of course, that's like the second question. And then you would like, what are your assets? And so the Canadian government brought out this support female entrepreneurs, $1 billion fund, blah, blah, blah. And so I called the bank that was doing it. And I'd already talked to this guy and I was just like, I'm really excited. Can you send me the application for this loan? He's like, well, Tessa, you've already filled out the application. I said, no, I haven't for the female fund. And he's like, well, it's the same application. And excuse my language, no, I won't. But I was just like, are you kidding me? I was like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. If you've noticed that women aren't getting the funding, then you've got to look at the reasons why they aren't. And he was like, oh, well, Tessa, it's about equality. And I said, no, it's not. It's about equity. I'm a mother. I've been at home with my kids for 5 years. I've gone through a divorce. I don't earn what a man can earn. I don't have the assets what a man can have. Like, so that was such an infuriating time to realizing all that inequity. And then I got to the point where I just had to be like, you know what, Tessa, it's there, get over it and just work around it. So I then had a couple of investors and they were amazing because I'm actually all female funded at the moment.
Oh, wow.
I'm fully female funded and female founded. So, which is pretty cool. So I did have 2 friends come in that I didn't know that they had the kind of money that I was asking for. And then after I got them, they're amazing women. Then someone from the bank approached me and was just like, I just love what you're doing. It's amazing. And he's like, I want to try and get you money. And I was like, good luck, buddy.
Yeah, right. I filled out that application.
Yeah, it's like, this does not work.
Yeah.
And he got it. He got it for me. So I was we had to raise over $1 million and I got half of it through investors and half of it and more than half through the bank. Yeah.
So
long slog.
How long have you've been open?
2017 we opened with our small location, and then something else I did that might be interesting for people too, and I'm sure you've had lots of I'm sure this is a common thing happening now, and I've heard it in your webinars, is I worked out a deal with the owner of the building. So because I couldn't find any investment at the time when I had pitched him my idea for his building, I said to him, look, I'm not going to find investors who will put in the millions of dollars to renovate your building. Yeah. I just won't. Yeah. But I'm happy to pay you an extra amount per square foot to pay back for all the tenant improvements. And he agreed. So that was really, really lucky.
So he essentially financed the tenant improvements that needed to be done. Yeah.
He totally financed it. And I mean, that took a massive leap of faith for him. And, a belief in a vision that I had for his building. So, yeah.
So what's next?
Oh, you've frozen.
Nope.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah. What's next?
So we've been looking in Vancouver. We were looking before COVID hit, and we're still looking now. So my hope is to open a 40,000 square foot space in Vancouver, and then Vancouver will house the full vision of Kwench, which will have hopefully 100-person theatre, or 50, maybe 50 actually, person live theatre, and some maker space, as well as everything that we have here. So Neighbourly will come with us. Neighbourly is our cafe general store. And we've had so much interest from Vancouver. And then that year, once we've opened there, I really want to see how the clubs operate together as a network. I'm sure that's a whole different thing, that I'd love to hear how some of your followers do that. Because especially with software is, how do you get them operating together? And then my hope is to go down the west coast of the States, building in little clusters. Yeah, hi.
Come here.
Yeah, I've been thinking Oakland in San Fran area, and then obviously Seattle's a very big commuter area for Victoria, because it's like right there. So we do sort of Seattle, Portland, Oakland, and then my hope is to be in Australia, because I'd like to move home.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. How will you raise for your expansion?
So we're doing a small raise now. That's to sort of get everything back up from COVID. Obviously, we were really, like all co-working spaces or event spaces, we were hard hit. And then the next raise will be just going out again, looking for the Vancouver raise. It's certainly amazing how, like, to anyone who's thinking of building it and people aren't getting your idea, just believe, and once you've built it, they'll get it. Because as soon as I opened, people that wouldn't even talk to me were coming in going, "Oh, this is what you were building? I didn't realize this is what you're building." I'm like, "Yeah, because you didn't sit down with me."
Right. Or I also just think it's natural. People, if they don't want, they can't see it, right?
Yeah.
So many people can't. So they say, I'm reading a book called Monetizing Innovation. And it's challenging, because I see what you're saying. But it's basically arguing that you should have like consumer proof and willingness to pay for something before you build it. Like, don't do the Steve Jobs mentality, and I live in Silicon Valley. So the mentality here is like, well, people don't know what they want, right? They didn't know they wanted, the iPhone or whatever. But I do understand what you're saying. There are investors who can't see it, right? Or the bank, they don't have some analog. Well, it's like that, right? Then they don't have the vision. So you have to really, really believe, which is,
boy, do you have to believe.
Yeah. I am curious about your pricing. Are you premium priced because of all of your offerings, or?
I mean, I don't think we are. We are in comparison to the other co-working spaces in Victoria. But our pricing is very similar to what a WeWork would be. I mean, Victoria, I guess, is a little bit, we're an island. Everything's a little bit slower here, but I mean, in pace. But it's definitely been a harder sell to Victoria, is where people who come from Vancouver are just like,
get it.
When are you moving here? Like, just open up, please. So I'm really excited for that. But
how different are the real estate costs in Vancouver?
Oh, like Vancouver is, I think, the second most unaffordable, I think, in Canada. I mean, we're close behind what San Francisco is. It's really hard. And Victoria, since the pandemic, has hit that too, because now everyone's like, well, let's just move to Victoria. It's beautiful. It doesn't snow.
Right.
Well, it does, but it just doesn't snow as much. And we're in a little bit of a rain cloud here, so we don't have to, is it rain cloud? It's called, well, like a rain shadow. Anyway, sorry.
So you don't
so we don't get a lot of rain.
Intense. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it will be different. And that is actually why I kind of have been looking at Seattle as well. I'm like, maybe Seattle's the first one. But I'd prefer if it was Vancouver, just a quick little jump across the pond. Yeah.
And the 40,000 square feet, is that so that you have space for the amenities that you want in the,
Yeah.
I think that's the trick, to your point, the starting with the 5,000 square feet is, and I remember you talking about what you wanted to create and knowing it was a big build out, it was a big, but it has to be to
house those things.
Yeah, to put everything in it that you wanted to provide. It's like you can't really beta that in 5,000 square feet. Yeah.
No, and that's the culture. Like I always say, it's not the co-working that should draw. I want to be like this festival space. I want it to look like a Luminato festival or Edinburgh festival. So people come here because of the culture and the people it attracts through its culture. And to have an office is like, oh yeah, of course I want to be around all those events and activities. But I think don't you find it really hard to be actually a profitable co-working space with 5,000 square feet?
Yes.
Okay.
Preach.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talk about that a lot. I think, and that's why I think you're a bit unusual in that you knew, even without a business background, you knew you had to get to scale partly to provide what you wanted the space to be. But so many people are fearful, right? They've never signed a commercial lease before. And so, covering rent on 25,000 square feet every month is heart attack inducing.
Oh my God.
So when people get into it, they go small space, shorter term lease. Yeah, because that feels less scary, but it most of the time won't get you. It depends on what your goals are, right? Everybody, there are different goals for different reasons. But you probably found with the 5,000 square feet, it's hard to cover staff and have profit. You need the scale.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get paid. So I opened up Kwench in 2017. So I went 2016 without any money, any pay. And then I didn't start getting paid until January 2020. And then COVID hit. So that's a long time to go. I learned how to live very economically. But you've got to, on the 5,000, you just can't do it. And another thing, I'm curious about your thoughts on this too. For me, I don't like co-working spaces that are bigger than 40,000 either.
Well, I was curious what you were thinking about that too. Yeah, I think that is common. Some people will go. So Brad, who started Hub Australia, or the Hub in Australia, he has said that, because I think when he started with 5,000 square feet, his very first similar space, and then started to grow. And I think they've gotten to the point, and they cater to enterprise users. I think he has 50,000 square feet, maybe 60,000 square feet in a couple of locations, and he said that's a lot of space. It's big, and you feel like you don't have your pulse on. It depends on what, back to what are you trying to provide? What's your culture? But think about a community manager who's trying to keep track of,
the names,
several, right? There's several at that point, but can know everybody? Maybe not. And so that's a different model.
Well, and I use in our pitch deck, I always use the Dunbar theory. So the Dunbar theory is the one where he says you can only have 150 to 300 friends. So for me, Kwench follows that to a T. We only build space that has no more than 300 people. So we can only house max, in this building, we can house 250. And so Vancouver will probably be around the same, but we'll just have more amenities.
And you'll have a more diverse revenue stream.
Exactly. Yeah, it's an interesting one. But once again, it depends what you're looking for. If you want to, I went to a WeWork, which was the first time in ages a few months ago, and I don't want to diss WeWork at all, but I was amazed how I instantly felt like a lab rat. I was just when you're going down these corridors of glass, and it's oh, where are we? Oh, and I really felt like I was a lab rat. And I was like, wow, I wonder if I feel like I'm one of their numbers.
Right. So they've made a choice and said, we care about the economic model. We ignore the Dunbar theory. More people are not going to know you, right? It's a different need.
It's a real estate play.
Yeah. And then the people who are using that space, it's just a different requirement for them. They don't care about the things that you're trying to serve, which is
maybe fine. They do care. They just don't know there's other spaces. And also, I just think that they probably do care. It's just that some of them don't have other choices, or they don't know.
It's an interesting perspective, because I do sometimes think, like, why would people pick, or someone chooses for them? We were talking sort of before we started about the power of choice. Enterprise companies, it's very easy for them to choose WeWork because of its network and, one point of billing. It's harder to provide the ultimate choice. And that's, starting to change with in the United States, the government just awarded contracts. And so the platforms will help sort of democratize that choice, right? WeWork's got one of those contracts, but 50% of the contracts have to go to small businesses. So WeWork won't qualify for that. Yeah.
I've been sharing.
Again, we're not using WeWork, but just
no. Well, it's everyone. There's different things for everyone. Like, honestly, when I read that in your newsletter, I've been showing that to everyone, because Victoria is the capital of British Columbia, and we have so many government workers, and the amount of times they come to me for advice on how to build their co-working space. And I'm just like, guys, I cannot give you any more advice. Like, you've got to consult me if you want me to do this, or I've got a crazy idea.
Right.
Why don't you just let people come here?
Right.
So why don't you
support the local business? Doing this.
Yeah, exactly. So, and especially support, when I think COVID was such a blinding realization of the security of government jobs, wasn't it? It was like, oh, that's job security. So it's like, okay, you've had job security, now start giving back to. So anyway, I think it's so great that the government's done it, and it's so good that Liquid Space was able to work the 50% thing into that. I think that's for small.
I suspect the government worked that in, but Liquid Space and DeskPass, will benefit from that.
So good.
So I'm curious, you're, you're building out your offering, your general store, your fundraising. What does your role in the business look like today?
Oh God. Too much.
Yeah.
When you have to wear each hat.
Right.
Like, okay, today I'm talking real estate. Oh, now I'm talking HR. We're hiring people. Oh, and now I've got to work with a member who's something. And now we're looking furniture because we're turning this room. It's constant. It's all over the place. But that's what my role looks like. I mean, we're expanding our team, and I'm really learning, because I'm sure that many of your listeners have been through this. Like, when you start it, you're it.
Yeah, you do all the things, right?
You clean the toilets. I mean, I remember coming in, cleaning toilets and clearing out the fridge and I did everything.
Oh, the fridge clean out, right? That's humbling.
Well, the Tupperware. You know what I get nervous is the Tupperware. Just take your Tupperware.
Take the Tupperware. Yep.
Yeah, and don't take my forks.
Yes.
Take your Tupperware, but not my forks.
Yeah.
But so I think it's really hard to sort of get to that point where you're giving people jobs and you're going, okay, I don't do that anymore. And for me, I don't come from a lording over everybody and I'm the boss lady. Like, we do everything evenly. So sometimes I have to
challenge, right? Because you can't do your second space without.
No,
right? Yep.
I have to step back, and I have my HR consultant, who is one of our members. She'll be watching me sometimes when I'm walking through the club with a toilet plunger, and she'll just be like,
right.
So I think that I'm learning to step back a bit more and understand that my value is better if I'm actually in more of the development.
Hard. Yeah. And
it's hard.
Right, you're in this in-between phase where you're probably not fully funded to step into that CEO role. Have you read the E-Myth Revisited?
I have, but I haven't got to the end, so maybe I should.
Yeah, but the whole work on your business, not in your business, but that
totally
hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was a big thing during COVID too. It sort of reverted back really quickly to like in it, and then now I've got to really concentrate on it. And I think I really, really believe that this is the future. That this way of working, we were talking before, this autonomy to choose, like trusting in people to make their own choices about where they work. And so these work clubs, because I do think it's going to evolve into offering more service to people. So this will be the way that people belong and feel like they're part of something. Like you said, you're at CrossFit. So one of the things I love about CrossFit people is they love their CrossFit. Like they're loyal to their CrossFit.
The people, right?
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's that thing that's going to happen with co-working spaces or work clubs as well, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Tessa, thank you for taking the time. You obviously have a lot going on to share your story. It was so fun for me to hear what's been happening since 2016. And please call me when you're ready to start your space in the Bay Area.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for all your newsletters and all the web conferences that you do. I'm really, and how generous you were to me when I came to the Bay Area. I'm really grateful. It was great to see you again.
Likewise. Thank you.